Good morrow to you all. You have fallen on barred times.
Brought to you by RHUL Shakespeare Society.
You've joined me, Cassie Dixon.
And me, Jack Hardman, as we bear some bardy truths. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Barred Times. This is Jack Hardman, I'm your host for today, and I am here with Cate. How are you doing, Cate?
I'm great. I am. I'm tired at the moment, but I'm actually really happy to be here. So yeah.
Good to hear
How are
it.
you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm really good. So Cate, obviously you are here as one of the directors for Shakespeare Society's show this term, Hamlet. So yeah, I was going to ask, how is that going? How are you finding directing?
I love it. I love it. I want to be a theatre director as when I grow up, you know. Um, and
Yeah.
so it's such a wonderful production to be a part of because I get to work with such an amazing cast and crew. I get to work with Eleanor Rutter, who is just amazing. She's just an
Yeah.
amazing individual. And we've got this amazing concept, and it's great, and it's going great so far. We just finished our third week of rehearsals, and so going great.
Amazing. Yeah. I was going to ask, how is it? So obviously, as part of this show, it's not just you directing; you are sharing that responsibility with Eleanor. So I was going to ask, how is that? Like, how is co-directing?
It's great. I mean, I've never directed my own production before. This is the first ever kind of theatrical production I've done. And so it's amazing to be able to share it with such a great person. Eleanor has so much experience, and I've learned so much already, and we're such on the same page about so many of the things and like ideas, and so it's great. And we kind of bounce off each other really well because I come from it. I come to the production with a film kind of education, and she comes to it, I mean, with a like theatrical background, and so we have this really nice mix of kind of ideas, and so it's really nice actually. So yeah, great.
Yeah. So obviously, being a as you said, you are interested in film. So what exactly is what is the concept here? Because it isn't just an audio drama, is it? It's more than that.
Yeah, it's more than that. It's a mixture of loads of different kind of things. It's very much experimental, and that's why I was what drew me to the project. It was so interesting. It wasn't just an audio drama. It's going to be filmed with like crew and stuff. It's going to be like there's going to be Zoom elements to it, and there's going to be cinematic interludes. So it's going to be all these things mixed together to make this amazing theatrical production, and it's going to be great. Well, I think it's going to be great, and I think a lot of other people think it's going to be great.
I'm really excited to see what like how you approach it, because honestly, obviously the comparison is there with David Tennant and Michael Sheen's Staged.
Yes, there is. Yeah, I've been in rehearsals and I've been like, oh, we have literally just in rehearsal, just not even like blocking it, just me and Eleanor just being like, yeah. I mean, I've thought to myself, yeah, this is very staged, and I love it because I love staged.
I mean, I would argue though that Staged is one example, but also like Unfriended from the horror film that came out a few years back. It's almost a subgenre of film.
It is. There's a lot of films that are like recorded like through like a computer, and so it's really interesting. And I mean, that really started with like horror films like Blair Witch Project, like the found footage film, or like the documentaries like Spinal Tap. Two very different films, but yeah, it all started from there, and it's become such a prevalent thing during lockdown especially, you've seen a lot of kind of shows like that, and I think taking those as inspiration is so important for this production. But I think we're making it completely our own. It's going to be something that I don't think anyone has seen before, especially with the Hamlet, because it's bringing all these things together and going to be different to anything. It's great.
That sounds amazing. My question is from, obviously that is the format in which you're putting it out in, and the format that we're going to be watching the play in, but can we have any insights onto the actual concept of where, when, etc. you're setting this?
So it's modern day England, and our Hamlet is a graduate of Eton. He's not going to be a prince. He's going to be a nobleman, a high middle class Englishman. From like a stiff upper lip family who don't talk about their emotions or don't have that accessibility, like the access to each other, if you know what I mean. And we're going to focus on male mental health and mental health in general during the production. So we're going to look at how Hamlet's madness affects not just him, his physicality, reality around him, but also his relationships with other characters. And I think it's so important to show that, because mental health is so prevalent within society, and especially during lockdown as well. I think a lot of people can understand just the amount of stress that someone can go through.
I think that's actually a really kind of like prevalent point at the moment, because I mean, mental health is something that has been affected so much by the lockdown, and is also something that hasn't, I mean, it's been talked about, I think, through like students talk about it, but say organizations and like universities and things, they're trying to help now. I think after a certain amount of pressure has been put on them, they're beginning to kind of notice that this is more of an issue, more of a problem, more of something that needs to be addressed. But they're still kind of fumbling, because mental health is something that is obviously has always been incredibly important, but isn't it hasn't necessarily been dealt with very well for a certain amount of time.
And especially young people's mental health. I remember just being at school, and there wasn't really an access to mental health specialists, or kind of understanding your own feelings. And as a teenager, it's scary to have these feelings of self-doubt and like a lack of confidence. And so it's really important through this production that we just show that teenagers, even like adults, sometimes don't have the ability to understand how strong emotions are and how it affects us as people. I mean, art production it's not set in lockdown. It's going to be like, you know, you can watch it anytime. But I think for me anyway, it's important that we do it during lockdown, because it does show themes that have affected us during and will after. So
Okay, so you say it's not going to be set during lockdown, but if it is going to be set, it is going to be filmed using webcams and the such. So how is that going to work in terms of filming scenes when people are talking through webcams, if that makes sense?
So it's like they're going to be in the same room together.
Right.
We're kind of blocking it so they look as if they're talking to each other. And I think that's really important. I think that's going to really drive the scene. Also with Hamlet, there's a lot of scenes when Hamlet's on his own, the monologues, you know, the most famous being to be or not to be. You know, we're going to really focus on his mental health and how it affects everything. And so it really is kind of the production really does come from Hamlet's perspective. So using those kind of different techniques will hopefully show that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that make sense? I don't think
Yeah,
it-
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Hamlet as a play, obviously been put on many, many, many times. But I don't think it's ever been put on. Have we ever put it on? I don't think we have.
We have 5
we?
years ago. 5
Okay.
years ago.
Okay.
Tom told me that.
Sure.
President of the Society
Yeah.
told me that.
But my
yeah.
question is Hamlet, does Hamlet have a special kind of place for you? What drew you to doing that specific play over any of the others?
Hamlet, I relate to. I mean, Hamlet is the most famous Shakespeare play to start with. It's everyone knows it. It's in the public kind of consciousness.
Yeah.
But for me, it really stood out to me when I read it when I was 16, 17.
Right.
You know, I'd lost someone very close to me a few years prior, and I read Hamlet and I had all these emotions and I didn't know what to do with them. It was like anger and grief and going through these kind of different steps in life. And I read Hamlet and I was like, someone understands.
Yeah.
It was kind of like when the needle dropped, I was like, oh my God, this person understands me. And this was written how many hundreds of years ago? And I was kind of surprised by that every time I go back to Hamlet and every time I read that play, I find something new and I relate to something new. It's never the same.
It's almost the reassuring and tragic knowledge that everything bad that's happened to you has probably happened to someone else at some other point and they got through it.
Exactly. It's kind of that reassurance of you'll be okay. I didn't go on a murdering rage. Like it's not what I did.
Yeah.
But, like the basic.
You decided to do the other bit of the play, which is put on a play.
I decided to put on a play.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just so interesting to look at it through. No, that didn't make sense. Sorry. I fucked that up.
What do you mean? You find it so interesting looking at it through?
I find it so interesting because it just tells you what it is to be human.
Yeah. I think
it just does. Hamlet is the most human character ever written, for me anyway, because he goes through all these things that so many of us, all of us, have experienced, whether it's on a small scale or a large scale. And so I think it's so important. That's what drew me to it, and I was so excited to be asked to kind of co-direct it.
Yeah,
I was very, very excited.
How did that work, by the way? Did you apply? Did you?
No, I was going to bid Hamlet anyway, but like that fell through. But then Dom asked me if I'd be up to co-directing it, and I jumped at the chance to do it because I love Hamlet. It's one of my favorite plays. You know, I think it's just great, and I think for me anyway, it has that emotional connection. Anyway. Yeah.
So I do have a question which I didn't brief you on, which is which is basically, I know we've had Eleanor on the podcast before, and I've worked with her quite a few times, and she is quite a physical director. I think she wouldn't hate me for saying that. She is a primarily like physicality related director.
Yeah.
So how does that relate to how you direct, and how does that fit in with the way that she does?
I mean, I think we're very similar with how we direct. We both like our actors to get up and about and explore their character through physicality. But I also like looking at the text itself and how it affects the characterization. So in our rehearsals, we start with the basic of looking at our character, their characterizations and their relationships, and then we move on to the physicality. And I think that's a really important move, or for me anyway, to like a movement progression almost, because it kind of allows us as the directors to explore the character with the actor themselves,
Yeah.
but also it allows us to kind of brainstorm different ideas and bring all these different things together and then move it onto the physicality, which is so important, I think, for any production, but especially for this, because our actors are acting in such small spaces.
The physicality
needs
to convince the audience that it isn't just people talking on a webcam, I suppose. Yeah.
And I think, well, so far we've done that.
Cool. It's going to be, I'm thinking about it, and I'm just thinking about how, say, the combat would work, or the intimacy between the characters would work if there's no physicality, and no not physicality, I mean, if there's no physical interaction there.
Well, we have ways around this, but I can't tell you because that's a spoiler.
Okay. Is that a secret?
So that would just give everything away, and I don't think I'm allowed to.
Okay, yeah. That's fine. But is there, so have you, so the way you've kind of dealt with it, you don't need to say about how exactly and the method in which, but how did you come up with that solution then?
There was a lot of brainstorming.
Right, okay.
There was a lot of back and forth between me, Eleanor, and Cassie.
Yeah.
For a good few weeks of how we were gonna kind of do the scenes. But yeah, we've come to solutions which are very cinematic and very interesting to look at, and I think it will be very different to anything people have seen in Hamlet.
Okay.
I'm really bigging this production up, and it's really terrifying. I'm that
sounds amazing, to be honest with you. I'm really excited to see that now.
It's going to be a different type of fight scene.
Sure. Okay. Just leave it there. That sounds amazing. A
little hint for everyone there.
Amazing. I genuinely can't wait to see this now. This is made me very excited. Not that I was not excited anyway. But it is kind of my job to be excited as social sec of the society.
Exactly. It would be bad if our social sec wasn't enthusiastic about it.
So you talked about obviously wanting to be a theatre director, and you are a film student, and we talked about that, and you said this way you've dealt with the kind of fight scenes and stuff is very cinematic in nature almost. I was wondering then, what is kind of it, are there any directors or anything like that who have influenced you, like in the way that you plan to do both this production and any productions in the future?
Oh gosh, there are so many. I could sit here for hours and hours and tell you who has influenced me and the directors I love, both theatrical and like film directors. Oh gosh. I love Joanna Hogg, who is she's an English film director. She did The Souvenir with Tilda Swinton, and she's done Archipelago and Unrelated with Tom Hiddleston.
Right.
And they are just such amazing films, and they're all about family, and they're all about identity. And I think they are really worth the watch. Like, watch them and you'll see why she's an amazing director.
Yeah. Is it something, is she very cinematic? Is there something, as in, like, is it a visual thing? Is it an audible thing? Is it just the way that she interprets story, character?
All of those three. She her visuals are very subtle,
right,
but they're so powerful at the same time.
Who else?
Who else? That's a very difficult question. I'm going to go on to a theatre director now. Josie Rourke, who was the AD the artistic director at the Donmar Warehouse, the theatre I want to work at when I'm older. So Donmar Warehouse, please hire me when I'm older. No, she did Coriolanus with Tom Hiddleston again.
Yeah.
Which was an amazing production, and I wasn't a fan of Coriolanus until I watched that production. It was great. She also did the trilogy set in the women's prison of Julius Caesar, Henry V, and Henry IV, which were just beautifully done, and they were great. She produced that, I think.
Right.
I love Philippa Lloyd, who did Mamma Mia, but she also directed the trilogy, the Donmar. Richard Eyre. I've got to say Richard Eyre because he's very famous. He's amazing as well. I loved The Hollow Crown. I loved that. And I love shout out to my favorite, Pedro Almodovar, who is a Spanish director who is just exquisite. Is amazing. He directs in a way where you just have to look at the screen. It's so vibrant and it's so beautiful and it's so well put together. Everything on the screen means something to the film.
Okay.
And he helped start the career of like Antonio Banderas and Penelope Cruz. But yeah, some of his films are very dark, but they're also very, very good. So anyone who likes like a dark comedy, he's right up your alley. He did like Pain and Glory, which came out a few years ago, which was nominated for the Oscars. It was one of the films nominated at the Oscars. He's great. I have too many. I'm going to stop there because I will carry on.
Okay. Well, you've mentioned quite a few like versions of other Shakespeare plays in there, and I was just wondering what you think the best, as a film student, and thus you must know every film. What is?
Yes, I do. That's a fact.
That's part of the degree, isn't it? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, of course.
My question is, what is in your opinion, the best version of a filmed Shakespeare play? Like, what's the best film version of a Shakespeare play rather than a filmed version of a Shakespeare play, if that makes sense?
Okay, so you want like adaptations of Shakespeare plays?
Yeah, so like Basil Evans' Romeo and Juliet, for instance.
Oh, okay. Well, some of you might know I love Taming of the Shrew. It's my favorite play. So I'm gonna have to go with 10 Things I Hate About You. I love that film so much, and Heath Ledger is my absolute. He's a beautiful man. He's like when like I think any person's dream is to be serenaded by Heath Ledger. Well, it is my dream anyway. But yeah, I love 10 Things I Hate About You. I love The Lion King as well. Hamlet, little Hamlet. And I'm gonna have to say The Hollow Crown as well, because they are such well done versions of the history plays. I think they're just really, really good. Like Jeremy Irons, is that how you say his name?
Irons, I'm pretty sure it's just Irons. Yeah.
Jeremy Irons. Him as the King Henry IV. Spectacular. He was so good in that. He was so good. It was also Richard Eyre who did that as well. So.
Very good. Yeah, I think you've mentioned. So, okay. So we'll stop talking about you now, if that's okay. And I want to move on to, so we had the Golden Globes nominations come out, I think it was this week. And so, yeah, relatively soon to when this episode is going to be airing. And there are lots of big nominations. There is obviously the kind of record-breaking 3 female directors up for best director. Incredible. But also one thing that I noticed that kind of piqued my interest a little bit, nominated for best musical or comedic movie, there is Hamilton, which is obviously on Disney Plus. And I'm just wondering, do you think that plays that have been turned into films like that should be up again for the same awards as things like The Prom, which came out this year?
Yeah, I think they should be, because it's the same craft essentially.
Right.
There is no kind of there are different techniques, but together there are similarities between both. I mean, I'm gonna go all technical now, but the beginning, like the birth of film, came out of vaudevilles and were a part of theatrical like pieces.
For those
Like,
of us who don't know what vaudevilles are.
Vaudevilles are basically there were theatres where people put on like different types of, I don't know, productions. So there was like stand-up, there was comedy sketches, and there was like gymnastics and dances and all these things. In film, well, early film especially was seen as part of that, really. And loads of actors, yeah, and loads of actors like Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton started in vaudevilles, Judy Garland as well. And so it was really, theatre and film were kind of interconnected throughout, and and so I think it's a great thing that now they're coming back together almost, and theatre is being seen as something that can stand not just together with film, but they're almost equal, if you know what I mean, and it's accessible to everyone. Because like growing up, theatre was always kind of London and always kind of very posh, and
it's
I'm
very
a girl from Birmingham. We didn't have the West End. So even though I did go to West End,
it's a treat rather than film, which is kind of like something that you not always have, but like you can watch a film 100 times. But you can only watch, but a play is only like done once, really. But that, I suppose, changes when you film the play. So yeah, that is actually a really good point. I didn't even think about the fact that kind of it is almost like they are on, is kind of putting them on equal setting. But it does bring up, my question is should they be up for the same kind of awards and competing in the same way as, say, a cinematic film rather than a filmed play? Because I don't know. For me, I would think they are so different that it's almost like putting a horror film up against like a rom-com, like a romantic film, and saying which one is better. It's like, well, they're very different. It's hard to compare Seven to About Time. Like, it's like, which one is better? I don't know, because I like them both. My thing would probably be, should they be up for the same kind of things, or should they be separated?
I mean, if it's for acting,
I suppose,
no, because it's the same principle for both film and theatre. There's only little like differences. I mean, for directing theatre is, for me anyway, learning about it, it's more kind of personal almost, because you're there every day. You get to know the actors more, and there's more interaction with the kind of script, the kind of work that you're doing. Not to say that there's not with theatre, with film directing, but film directing, you always know that it's going to end, and you know that there's so much technicality there, and there's so much technical stuff that you need to do, that there's not that kind of idea of like being in a rehearsal room every day. It's kind of more separate. Yeah, I don't know where that point was taking me.
No, that was that makes sense. Like it's not.
They're two different crafts.
With film, it's very much time is money.
Yes,
which
exactly.
is every second counts because every second is £1,000, $1,000, $1,000. But with theatre, you have time to experiment and play and kind of interact with one another on a very deep level. I suppose directing is very but it's like how best actor is one category, but best comedy is a different thing to best.
I mean, I think they should all
drama.
just be the same.
Fair.
I think they should all be the same, because if you're acting, if you're funny enough to be nominated for a comedy, and everyone laughs at your performance, and then you're nominated for a drama and everyone cries at your performance, it's on the same level. You've still done your job, and you've still created an emotional connection between the audience.
Yeah, and I see what you mean there. I would counter that with, though, do you think people give, say, an action film the same credence as a drama? Like, or a comedy the same credence as a drama? Like, are the Hangover films on the same level as, I don't know, The Danish Girl? I'm just trying to think of examples off the top of my head. I don't know why The Danish Girl came to me.
It's a great film. Both are like amazing films. I mean, I don't think people do. I think of them as the same.
Sure.
But I don't think Hollywood or
the Academy or whatever.
The Academy do.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think you'd see Tom Cruise nominated for Mission Impossible for Best Actor.
Yeah.
I just don't think he would. But he was nominated for Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
Which is a drama. Like, I think people see action. There's a theory about this in film. Post-classical Hollywood, yes. Where people see comedy and horror as kind of for kids or like for teenagers, and they're not real art. And
I think Jennifer's Body's an interesting example of that, because it's an incredible film, but it's very much a horror film, and that's not up for debate, but it's also an incredibly powerful commentary on the rights that women have over their own bodies.
And like the male gaze as well. They chose Megan Fox for a reason, and they subverted that. And I think it's just fantastic. I have to study that later this term, which I'm very excited.
I'm jealous, because that is a great film. I would happily watch that multiple times. I look at flies coming out of eggs. I bet you're very jealous of that.
Obviously.
I bet you all are.
Of course.
Anyway. But I think that was okay. I think that was an interesting conversation. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I didn't really answer your question, but to answer the question,
I don't think it's one of those. I mean,
things that you can answer.
Yeah, there isn't a definitive answer, is there? It's just what we think is right.
For me, I think that everything should be seen on the same level, especially theatre and film, because they are so interchangeable. And
if something is powerful, then it's going to be powerful
regardless.
Regardless, yeah.
Yeah, if it's a film or if it's a play. And so I think it doesn't matter. And I think it's great that Hamilton got nominated, because it just shows how influential film and theatre is, not just on like people, just on society as a whole.
Yeah.
And I think it's an amazing thing.
I mean, it's an incredibly powerful piece. Hamilton is one of my favourite productions out there, just because of how incredibly emotional it is, and how just incredible it is in general. But And I do have to do this because I do this every week. Some people will call it a crutch. I call it a tradition. What is your favourite Shakespeare play?
I've already answered this. 10 Things I Hate About You.
You have
Or
already.
Othello. Or Othello. Either one.
Do you mean Taming of the Shrew or 10 Things I Hate About You?
Oh,
10 Things I Hate About You, famously written by
William Shakespeare.
William Shakespeare.
No, Taming of the Shrew and Othello are my favourite Shakespeare plays. I can't choose between either of them because that's cruel. But yeah, they're my two favourites.
Great. Okay, well, I think I am going to call it there for today. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, Kate. It has been incredibly lovely. Thank you for joining me this week for Bard Times. This has been Jack Hardman. Stay safe and, in the words of the Bard himself, give every man thy ear and few thy voice. Thank you and stay safe.